Yeah, I'd like to say how thrilled I am to be playing here. You know, obviously it's the first time in my career, and I would have come at any time that I was invited. So thank goodness it happened at last. Touring is my favourite thing to do. Singing is the forum that I like to work in the best. So I'm really delighted to have the chance to sing for you. So thank you for inviting me. It's an eclectic mix, you know. Obviously it covers 30 years, so I go right back to Yazoo to the current day. It mixes dance with chanson, with pop music, with folk. It's very mixed up, although I would say the band that I work with is quite an organic band, and so everything has to be morphed into sing together, so it's not some kind of nasty backing track carrying.
You're performing at the Holon International Women's Festival. Are you planning on visiting any women's organisations or any other groups here while you're visiting in Israel?
Not specifically groups. I mean, my son, his best friend from school is an Israeli who lives in Tel Aviv, so my son's come to join me, and his friend's going to show us around, so it's kind of going to be down to him where I end up.
Do you believe that it is harder for women to achieve success in the entertainment business?
You know, it's hard to judge because I've only ever been a woman, so I've only ever faced women's issues, you know. And in that sense, I would say that I found things ridiculously easy, and I don't know why that is. I think that my achievements have always outweighed my ambitions, and I was brought up to be quite outspoken and not frightened of emotion, so I don't particularly see wars as being wars, you know.
Have you paid the price for doing what you really wanted to do with your life and your talent?
Yeah, have I? I don't know, because I've lived in a rarefied world, I suppose, in lots of ways. I mean, I left school uneducated and without any prospects, and growing up in a small working class town where we were all expected to be factory fodder. So the very fact that I've had 30 years singing as a living, the fact that I earn enough money to be able to say no has been a blessing. So it would be a bit churlish of me to start decrying my experiences. You know, I've had some shits in my life, and that's always unpleasant for everybody. But no, I've been quite fortunate.
I have 3 very short questions for you. When can we expect your next album, your 8th album?
Well, I'm hoping to start working on that. When I go back to England, I'm touring with Jules Holland for a while. I like the idea that the problem with my job, the one thing I don't like about it, is how cyclical it is. You're either touring or you're recording, or you're writing, and it goes back to the beginning again, and you stop singing for long periods of time. What I like about guesting on someone else's tour is the fact that I'll be singing the whole time that I'll be writing. So the next project that I'm going to be working on, I think, is going to revisit electronica.
Which is the song you most like performing of all your repertoire?
That's a difficult thing to say. What I can say is I least enjoy performing hits. And I think, the fact that I'm one of those rare breed of women who really likes being middle-aged, I found my 20s quite torturous, and I prefer the music of people who have lived and have got, I like lyrics that reflect life, and when I think about some of the early songs that I wrote, that was all about imagination. I was writing about a broken heart before I'd ever had one, But then when I was a kid, I loved the idea of the French lieutenant's woman had been able to sob much before I ever wanted to hold hands. I couldn't wait to sob.
Would you really like an MBE?
An MBE, which I like one. Oh, you're talking about my thing on the website. I'm really not fussed. I'd like a certificate. I'd like that. Like I say, I never had an education, and some kind of certificate would be nice. Yeah.
Do you have a message for your fans in Israel?
Only that I don't know if I'll ever be invited again, and this is, as far as I'm concerned, it's a one-off. Not that I want it to be, but I think that's the best way to think of anything in life. That I will give this concert everything that I have, and I'm so excited about it. So just to please come. I have 3 major. Actually, I've got 4 major memories. One's a bit rude. The first thing
with this one.
Shall I? Well, I would do, but you might think me very bad. But I'll probably tell too much, which I tend to do anyway. But anyway, so the one memory I had was being in the desert when the sun was going down, and there was a big camel, and I remember it being so hot, and I've never been very good with temperature, you know, and I just started speaking to the cameras, you know, going, all right, mate, it's been a hot day today, you know. And the makeup artist came, sidled up to me, she said to me, you know, you want talking to the camera? Yeah. She said, has it answered you? So that was one thing. I remember being really bad at haggling and really not wanting something in the market that someone was really trying to sell me, and saying to him, I don't want it. And he said, how much? I was like, £5. He got so furious that he swore at me all the way down the street. You fat bastard. I was really ashamed. The other memory is the intern that worked on the video, who was a work experience boy, ended up being the head of the record company in England, which was you know, an interesting, which you remind me, you know, that. and the rude one was being in the marketplace where someone was selling makeup, and me and my first husband went in there, and this guy asked afterwards if he could take his picture together with us. So me and my husband, I can't believe I'm telling you this, stood on either side of him, and his hand went down my skirt, under my knickers onto my arse. And I remember thinking as a young woman, oh my God, he's going to be so embarrassed that he did that. I won't say anything to embarrass him. And you know, I was only like 21 at the time, you know, so obviously much later you realise he probably did. He was quite a lot older, and he probably did, but I was sitting there thinking about how embarrassed he'd been. I felt bad for him. That's my story. Which, yeah, you probably didn't need to hear it, did you?
More than that. And what about the 80s music?
About the 80s, well, you know, I have a chip on my shoulder about being called an 80s act because, you know, I started singing in the 60s, for example, you know, and, you know, I find that particularly limiting because other than the Yazoo work, which I really enjoyed doing, you know, it was quite groundbreaking, you know, I don't consider it to be my best creative period, you know, and you know, I appreciate that you're known for the time where you made the most money, but that's not always the time you make the best art. And so the 80s is all well and good, you know, I'm slightly bemused by it, but and I'm happy to profit from it, but I don't see it as my defining moment. So Andy Fletcher, Martin Gore and Dave Garn, I knew them all quite well because I've gone to college with one, I've been in the same class as the other two. Vince was the one guy that I knew the least. I knew him partially because the guitar player in my punk band, Robert Marlowe, was his best friend, and so he kind of knew of me, and I was a bit of a face on the scene. So when he asked me to sing on his demo, you know, I did it purely because I had no other means of making a demo. But the minute we did the demo, the record company were really excited about it and wanted us to go into the studio, and we were just working solidly, so we had no chance to have a conversation or even to go for a drink with one another, you know. And we were quite different characters at the time. I was a bit of a fighter and a table thump. You know, I grew up in a screaming family, and you know, I didn't think anything of that. You know, whereas he was very English and sedate and didn't say anything. He's like, yeah, and you know, it just didn't work out well. And also for him, I was like the interim relationship. You know, Depeche was his band, and he had intended to start another band so soon, and had he, I don't think it would have been with me. You know. Anyway. For me, as I said to you before, working live is the most exciting part for me, and the second album we never got to perform live, and I always felt that was a project unfinished. So at any time over the last 25 years I would have worked with him again. You know, I liked working with him, and I just asked him, I just emailed him one day, do you fancy doing a tour so we can do the second album? And he just said yes, and that was it. You know, I think we had 2 emails and then we were on tour together. But what was brilliant about that is by this time he'd had a son, and you know, I was infinitely calmer than I had been in my youth, and we had more common ground, you know. And you know, we shared a really important part of our history. You know, I always, even though I was a table thumper, always, you know, loved him for him giving me that escape from where I was, you know, and I was always grateful for that. I just rattled, don't I?
Okay, everybody. Thank you again for coming.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, really,